Welcome everyone. This is Laura Candler from Teaching Resources. I am so excited to be here with you today to share MI theory, mindset, and motivation. These are some strategies that I developed from my own classroom, and I'm so thrilled to be able to share them with you this evening. So let's go ahead and get started. So as I said, I'm Laura Candler. I'm a former classroom teacher, upper elementary. I taught mostly 4th and 5th grade. I taught for 30 years before retiring just a few years ago. I'm national board certified. I have a master's degree in elementary education, and I was honored a few years ago with a Milken Educator Award. I absolutely love teaching. I really was not ready to retire when I retired, but life kind of took some twists and turns, and I did have to retire at the time, and thought I would go back, but things didn't work out that way. But I truly enjoy working with teachers in many different ways, and it kind of fills that little, hole in my heart that that I feel sometimes of not having someone to teach. So I love the opportunity to be able to do webinars. So I do have a website, lauracandler.com, teaching resources, and a blog, Corkboard Connections, where I share a lot of I update my ideas. The website is kind of like a file cabinet of just stuff, like all kinds of resources and freebies and strategies, but the blog is where I can sort of keep things up to date. And I do have a Facebook page, Teaching Resources. A lot of you probably follow me there. And I have some Facebook groups for teachers that I'll be sharing about later in the presentation too. And I love Pinterest. Have a lot of Pinterest boards and a lot of resources there. I try to curate and collect lots of great things for teachers, and I'm kind of getting started with Instagram. I like it too, but I don't have as much of a presence there. I am in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is where I taught my whole career. I actually was born up in New Hampshire, so I'm sort of a misplaced New Englander, I guess, but I've lived in the South for over 30 years, so kind of a mix of both. Okay, let's do a quick tech check, and I would suggest that if possible you watch the webinar on a laptop or a desktop computer and not a mobile device. If you have to be on a mobile, that's fine, but if you're having problems, it might be because of being on a mobile device. The fastest connection you can get is best, and sometimes you can do things to speed up your connection, like close any open browser tabs and computer apps, pause problems that involve background syncing like Dropbox, or if somebody in your house is streaming video or whatever, just be aware that that may interfere with the sound quality and some of the other aspects of it. So let's jump into why are you here? I know you are super busy this week. You're probably starting back to school, or you've already been back to school, and I'm so honored to have you here with me this evening, and I will try to value your time and pack a lot into this hour. So maybe you're here because you want to know why growth mindset has become the new buzzword in education. Or maybe you're wondering if multiple intelligence theory is still relevant. I mean, Dr. Garner came up with this, 40 years ago, just about, I guess. And so, is it still relevant? Maybe you'd like to learn easy, practical, engaging strategies for teaching kids about MI theory and growth mindset. Or maybe you want your students to enjoy learning and to become lifelong learners. Maybe you want to empower your students to overcome setbacks and challenges. A lot of times we see kids struggle and it seems like they just give up so easily, and we just want them to be able to develop that persistence. But I think maybe the number one reason to be here is that you want your students to believe in themselves as much as you believe in them. And this kind of goes back to the webinar that I did. Actually, I presented it on Saturday and presented a few times before that, called How to Launch a Super School Year. And one of the themes in that webinar was really conveying a message to your students about how much you believe in them and how amazing they are. But a lot of times kids don't they don't internalize that because they've struggled for so long and they don't think of themselves as amazing. But with the strategies that I'm going to be sharing tonight and in the second part of this webinar, I think that they will discover that they are amazing individuals. And here's a question I haven't really thrown out in my webinars yet, but why am I, Laura Candler, why am I here? And this is why I'm here. These are snapshots from the last couple of years that I taught, and I love teaching. As I said before, I liked using the multiple intelligence theory concepts in the classroom. I didn't have the terminology of growth mindset at the time, but since I've been out of the classroom and been reading and discussing, growth mindset with other educators, I realized that was actually something that I was doing with my students, was really teaching them to have a growth mindset and to believe in themselves. So these things worked so well for me in my classroom that I want to have an opportunity to share these ideas with other teachers, and not just in a theoretical way, but also, practical strategies like how do you implement these things? What do you actually do? And also to share resources with you to make your job a little easier. So I guess my main take on this whole thing is that MI theory, multiple intelligence theory, and growth mindset are powerful tools for educators when they're used together. So to get you to that point where hopefully you see this as well, I'm going to give you some background, just a little, because I'm not real big into theory and research. I'm a little more into like what works in the classroom. I'll get into implications for educators in the classroom, how to introduce these concepts to students, and lots of teaching strategies, activities, lesson ideas, and resources to explore. So hopefully you found your handouts. If you did not find the handouts, I did send them out in the confirmation email that came from me. Sometimes those get trapped in spam filters and that kind of thing, and people don't get them. So they're also in your webinar. If you're in the live session, you'll be able to look in your participant panel right above the question box. There'll be a little Adobe symbol that if you click on it, you can get the handouts there. Other than that, you would have to go back to your confirmation email and find them. And I wanted you to know that hopefully everybody's aware when you register. I tried to make it really clear that it's a two-part webinar. This webinar started out as a 90-minute webinar. I've presented it several times that way. And it's just so packed with stuff, but I kept coming up with more and more ideas. Even today, I added another freebie to this webinar, and I'm going to be adding another freebie to part 2 that's going to be on Wednesday. So from the 4-page handouts, we are going to use these 2 pages today, and you see it says part 1, and then on Wednesday, we're going to be doing part 2 on growth mindset. And then the 2 webinars will kind of like be together as one, I guess you'd say. And if you are not able to be here for part 2, I will send you the replay. I mean, I'd like for you to be able to be here, but I certainly understand it's in the middle of a, back to school week. For many of you, it's going to be difficult. So anyways, I just wanted to know where we're going with all of this. And I also wanted to let you know that the webinar is free for you to watch live, and I will send out a free replay that will be available for a limited time. But if you want ongoing access to the webinar and to other resources that go along with it, I do sell it all together as a webinar pack, and that comes with high quality video recording of the webinar, a PD certificate. When I say editable, you can type your name and information in there, and the webinar pack that's available now on TPT is the 90-minute one. But if you purchase it now, I will be updating it at the end of the week with the 2-hour one, and it'll have a 2-hour professional development certificate. So it's like 2 webinars in one. And all of the freebies that I mentioned are also on that page. And then I have PDF handouts of all of the webinar slides, which are really nice when you're going through it, and then you can refer to that. So you don't have to watch the webinar all over again if you just want to remember a certain part. So my webinar packs sell for just $4.95, which I think is a pretty good deal for professional development, but there's a big sale going on TPT right now, so the cost right now is under $4, and I will give you the information on that later if you're interested. Or if you have to leave this webinar early, just go to TPT and look in my store for that. But at the end of the webinar tonight, I will be sending you to a link to a page that has all the freebies that go along with the activities that I'm sharing today. So I just want you to be aware that that's coming. And I wanted to give you a visual. I'm a visual person, but here's a screen capture of all the freebies that are on that page. Well, actually, only the MI theory ones are on there now. And then Wednesday after the other session, I will update it with the growth mindset ones. So there's a lot of great free resources for you, and there's going to be tons of free strategies. But I will be upfront with you and tell you that at the end of the webinar, I'm going to be sharing some other resources with you that you may want to explore, and I hope that's okay. I'm going to give you, like I said, a lot of free value strategies and things where you don't have to make a purchase, but if you choose to do so, there will be additional resources for you that I'll share about. One of those I will be sharing bits and pieces of throughout the webinar is a book that I've written a few years ago and I've updated several times called Multiple Intelligence Theory for Kids. And I'll be sharing a lot of strategies from the book. Many of them you could do on your own if you wanted to, but I just wanted you to be aware that that's a resource for you at the end. So let's talk a little bit about what does it mean to be smart, and that was in one of the emails that I sent out. If you were receiving my emails, sometimes people only get the ones from GoToWebinar and they don't get mine, but I ask you to think about what does it mean to be smart. So I'm going to stop for a minute. I've talked for a moment, and I'd like for you to type in the question box to me. What do you think it means to be smart? If somebody said, you're smart, or what does it mean to be smart? What do you think? So let me see what some of the ideas are. Just all you have to do is click in the question box. There we go. Okay, able to problem solve, capable of doing certain things, ability to learn and make connections, work your way through problems. It's interesting, I'm seeing things like persevere to solve problems, things that, a couple of years ago we might not have thought about as being smart, but you're totally on to me with the idea of problem solving and persevering to solve problems. We'll get into that throughout the webinar. So I'm not going to answer the question right up front. That was just a little something for you to think about. And then let's take a look at what Dr. Garner says about being smart and multiple intelligence theory. So I'm quite sure that as educators, most of you are aware of, Dr. Garner. Howard Gardner was the psychologist and professor who came up with this concept of multiple intelligence theory. And it was quite a while ago that he did this, and I heard last year that some people, this was on social media, when I would post about MI theory on Facebook, some people would kind of jump on there and say some negative things and say, oh, that's out. Like, growth mindset is the thing now, and MI theory, that's done, that's out. And it was disturbing to me to hear that. But as I kind of thought through it, I started realizing, I disagree. So that's kind of where I'm going to be sharing with you this evening. And some of you may have heard those types of things, and we'll see where it goes. So before we get started hearing more about what Dr. Garner thought about intelligence, I'd like for you to do a little true-false quiz with me. It has just 3 questions, and if you grab your first page of your handout and you see where the arrow is pointing, I'm going to just show you 3 questions coming up, and I just want you to put down T or F. So here's the first one. MI theory tells us that we are smart in many ways. And if you want to put it in the question box for me to chat with me, you can do it there too. Some people like to wait till all three are done and then they put them all in together, and some people just put the number and put their answer. But I definitely want you to write it on your paper because we're going to come back to this at the end of the presentation. Okay, number 2, MI theory says we're born with different intelligences and those are fixed within us. What do you think about number 2? I'm looking to see if anybody wants to share with me. You remember, I don't know your names and I'm not going to embarrass anybody. Okay. And number 3, Dr. Garner defined intelligence as a set of abilities, talents, or mental skills. Is that part of his definition? All right, let's take a look. So, what does it mean to be smart? You know, we think about the word smart as being intelligent, just another way of saying intelligent. Dr. Gardner was really interested in looking at traditional IQ tests and saying, you know, what are they measuring? And what he discovered was most of the traditional IQ tests were measuring your mathematical and logical thinking ability and your verbal or your linguistic ability. And so when you look at how well those traditional IQ tests predict future success, they actually do really well. Like kids who score high on IQ tests tend to do well in school. Guess what? That's because the IQ tests are testing the very things that we do in school, which is a lot of math and reading. But he noticed an interesting thing when he looked at IQ scores, and then he correlated it with success in life and business and, you know, later on after school, and he found out that the correlation really wasn't there. Just because somebody has a high IQ does not mean that they're going to be successful after they get out of school. So all of this, you know, thinking and reflecting got him onto the idea that maybe IQ is not just like one-dimensional factor, that we use these IQ tests and then you have this number and it represents how smart you are. So he did say, and this kind of goes to one of the true-false questions, he noticed that in the traditional view, intelligence does not change much with training or age or experience. The traditional view said that intelligence was an inborn attribute or faculty of the individual, like you were born that way. But he did not feel that way. And so that's where I think there are some misconceptions with MI theory and people saying, well, it's out, because some people feel like, well, he's just saying that you're born with smart in different ways and those are fixed, and that is not at all what he said. So what he did say was his view of intelligence. He defined it as, he called it human cognitive competence, I guess, but it's better described in terms of a set of abilities, talents, or mental skills, which we call intelligences. But he goes on into more detail about it. He says that an intelligence is the ability to solve problems or create products that are valued in one or more cultural settings. And so a lot of you, when I asked you earlier, what do you think of intelligence? You were putting in there like solving problems and that kind of thing, and that's true. But I also like his aspect of, creating a product, not a product to sell, but, just something. You're creating something. That's another way that you can show your intelligence. But the cultural, valued in cultural settings is really important, because if you think about it, we think of intelligence, or maybe those of my generation thought of intelligence as, the IQ test, and it had reading and math, and those are valued in our culture. But think about thousands of years ago, in the days of early mankind, those weren't valued. They weren't even really skills. It was how could you hunt for food? Could you run fast, and could you escape predators? So I think he has a really good point that the intelligence should be tied to the cultural setting. And then if you get into reading his book Frames of Mind and some of his other books, you'll learn that he even feels that there's a biological component, that there's like a part of the brain that's associated with each of the intelligence areas that he identified. And he bases a lot of this on research into things like accidents, where somebody actually has damage to a certain part of their brain, and it affects a certain capability that they have. So, you know, it's really, you can get really deep into it. Like I said, I tend to go, you know, a little more basic in a webinar, but it's, you know, it's very interesting if you want to dig into it on your own. So let me see if I can get to the next page. So now that brings me back to the question about SMART. When I was preparing for the webinar, you know, it kind of occurred to me, it was like, well, where does Dr. Garner say SMART? Because people don't like MI theory because we're telling kids that they're smart. So where does he actually talk about this? I couldn't find anywhere. I couldn't find anywhere that he uses the word smart. It's educators. We can take credit for this, and I'll tell you how it came to be that we started using these kind of terms. If you take a look at Dr. Garner's 8 multiple intelligence areas, actually there's a 9th one now called existential, which is kind of like a spiritual thing. Those are pretty much a mouthful. Like, you know, high school kids and middle school kids could probably learn those pretty easily, but elementary kids, it just seemed a little daunting, intimidating. So educators came up with these kid-friendly terms. So verbal linguistic becomes word smart. And I'm going to go through the meanings of these specifically just because, you know, I'm not sure how much background knowledge everyone has, and there are some finer points of some of these, but if you go through these, I've just kind of matched them up. These are words that educators came up with. Now, I don't know if educators have come up with something to go with existential, but personally, I didn't teach that. I feel like, you know, that being that it's like religious and spiritual aspect, unless you are teaching in a religious school, it's probably one that you wouldn't want to cover. So that's where this idea of, you know, multiple intelligence means you're smart. And I wanted to let you know that I have these free posters that I created. In most of my MI resources, I have the adult terms, the Dr. Garner's terms, and the kid-friendly ones. And I personally think that, and I'll explain as I go through in more detail, upper elementary, if you can introduce the more challenging terms and teach those, I think that they are more precise and it's better. The younger kids, you may want to stick with the real kid-friendly ones. But let's go through sort of what each of the 8 multiple intelligence areas is like in terms of, if you are strong in this area, what are some of your skills and interests? So I actually created a little set of posters. I'll tell you about this later, but the one of the first posters is just a simplified definition of multiple intelligence theory that you can share with students. And then what I've done with these posters is I have the Dr. Garner's term at the top and then the kid-friendly term at the bottom. And then every poster that I'm going to show you, I actually flipped it in another set to where it has like word smart at the top and then verbal linguistic at the bottom, so you can go either way. But if you just glance through, most people are pretty comfortable with knowing what verbal linguistic means. It's not just reading. It's like really having a grasp of the language, and people who are verbal linguistic like jokes and riddles and puns and like word play, and you know, they just love words. Musical rhythmic, that one's fairly obvious too. It doesn't necessarily mean that you, for instance, play an instrument really well, or somebody may be musical rhythmic and they don't play an instrument because they never had money in their family to take lessons or whatever. But if they did have the opportunity to learn, you know, they would be able to pick it up quickly. Mathematical logical is one that sometimes is confused because people think it's just math, especially when we say math smart to the kids, then they think it's just math, but really it's logic too. So people who are mathematical logical like using numbers and symbols, but they also like organizing things and analyzing. They like strategy games like chess, and they like logic problems. They like experimenting and they will be the ones who do an experiment and actually, you know, carefully control their variables and write down their results, and they're very methodical about things. So it's not, that's why I say if you can teach the kids the more advanced terms, I think you're better off doing so. But if they're, third grade or younger, it's probably best to just stick with the easier ones. Bodily-Kinesthetic is another one that sometimes is confused because people think body smart, they just think sports and movement, but also bodily-kinesthetic means you need to touch things and move things. You hands-on lessons are what you need. You like to construct and build and act out things and role play and manipulate objects and move things around. You've got to have your, you can't just read it and learn it. You got to touch and move things. Visual spatial is often confused because when you call it art smart, then people think that it's just coloring and drawing, but actually it has a lot to do with your ability to visualize things and the space around you. You're good at reading maps and diagrams. You like creating charts and graphs of things, taking pictures, so it encompasses a whole larger area. You're one of those people that when you drive around, you know where you are. You don't get lost easily because you can visualize your surroundings. Interpersonal, and then the next one, intrapersonal, can be tricky. I taught my students that inter is like between, so interpersonal is like between people, and intra is like inside, and that's the self-smart one. So interpersonal is communicating with others, having that respect for other people's viewpoints, working with a team, like they make friends easily, they get along with others. That's interpersonal. And then intrapersonal is they are very reflective. They question and wonder. They think about their feelings. They set personal goals. They stop and reflect on their progress. And maybe they keep a journal of what they're doing. So this is the intrapersonal strength. And then the naturalist is somebody who's just good with, they enjoy learning about the earth, protecting the environment, things like weather and geology, and they like to be out in nature. All those things would be the naturalist or nature smart. So as I said, I have kid-friendly variations of all these posters. This is actually something brand new that I just added last week to my book, Multiple Intelligence Theory for Kids. So now it's almost like a little bit of a bundle because it has the book and it also has these posters, and it has something else that I'll share with you later too. So let's talk about the implications of MI theory. First thing is, I really think you should teach kids about multiple intelligence theory. And if you say, we're smart in many ways, I don't think there's a problem at all with using the word smart. If you're with me Wednesday for the growth mindset piece, we will talk about that there are concerns about praising kids for being smart, but that's to me not the same thing as saying that we are intelligent or we are smart in many different ways. There's kind of a distinction there. So I hope you'll come back and join me Wednesday for the second part of that. I think we need to help kids discover their own strengths in the areas where they need to grow. And I think we need to plan lessons that incorporate many intelligence areas. So when you are aware of these 8 areas, then you're not just planning things that involve reading or math or writing. You're thinking about how can I bring in the bodily kinesthetic or the music or, these different areas. So I want to share with you a unit that, a sequence of lessons that I taught year after year and kind of fine-tuned it, and it worked really well for me. The first thing I like to do is administer this kid-friendly MI survey. Now, I sent out an email. Some of you probably didn't get it till like an hour before the session started, so you may not have had time to do it. Did anybody have time to actually try the survey? It was something I sent out this morning. But if you have done the survey in the past, if you have not done it, you really should do it before you give it to your kids. It's very interesting. It helps you understand. But I'm going to share more about this. It's a free survey that I have. So after you administer this survey, you teach the kids about those 8 multiple intelligences. And you notice you do the survey first because you don't want them to be trying to guess at, the answers. And then after you teach them about the 8 areas, you're going to score the surveys, discuss the results, and you're going to share them if appropriate, and I'll talk about what I mean by that. And then a really key piece is to practice applying MI theory to learning experiences and to life in general. It's not just something to memorize, but you're going to be working with the kids to say, like, how could we use our intelligences, our smarts in this area. And then the last thing is some kind of quiz or testing, assessing for understanding of those concepts. So I'm going to go through some activities and resources that you can use for these different steps. Let's start with that survey. So there's a little packet that you can download, and I recorded a video. The video, it tells you like how to administer. I need to update that video. The video is like 5 years old, so the cover of the book or whatever you might see in there is really old, but it's still good to follow. But I'm going to share with you pretty much what I just say in the video. But you start with a page that looks like this. I do not call it MI survey or multiple intelligence survey because I don't want the kids to even know that this is about intelligence. So I just called it Getting to Know You survey, and I gave it to the kids either in first week of school, or if you've already been in school for a while, you can still give it to them next week. But I just said I wanted to know a little bit more about them. But before I gave it to them, I folded it back on that dark line so that it looked like this, it's kind of the hot dog fold is what some people call it, but I folded the chart part of it back behind so that the only thing that they saw were the 24 statements, and I gave them out that way. I did ask them to flip over and kind of put their name on it and then just turn it back down, but I had it folded back. Now, I taught 5th grade and 4th grade. I've done this with 4th and 5th grade, but I read aloud each statement one at a time. Even though the kids could have read it on their own, it was the beginning of the year. I didn't know how well they read. I want to make sure that, we kind of stayed together, and if there was any explanation that was needed, I just read it. And then as I was reading it, I had the kids score it from 0 to 5, depending on how true that was for them. And as they scored it and I read it, I was walking around the room and I was kind of looking to see what they were writing, because if somebody was giving everything 4s and 5s all the way down, I would stop and say, look guys, it's not like a test where you're going to get a grade on it. It's not likely that very many of you would be 4s and 5s in all these areas. You should have some 1s or 2s in some things probably, and you need a good spread of things. And I just sort of gave them a little pep talk, I guess, about that. And then we did not score them. I just collected them, and then we scored them after they learned about MI theory. So this was just administering the test. Now, this is a test I made up for my own classroom, because back then we didn't have TPT. There wasn't anywhere to go look for stuff. I could not find any MI theory test anywhere that was suitable for kids. They were all long. I had like 50 questions. So I thought, this is too much for kids, and I'm going to make up my own. And what I did is I picked 3. I made up 3 statements for each area, and then I scrambled them up. That's why there's 24 statements. You'll see why that's important later, but it's not research-based or anything. I have people email me all the time asking if they can use it in their action research study or whatever, and I say yes, but it's just something I made up for my own classroom, so I don't have any data to support it, and I've never tried to collect data when using it. It's mostly just to learn about the kids. So I brought back these posters again to remind you. So I had that 5-step process. The first step was to do the survey. The second step is to teach the kids about these areas. So how might you go about doing that? Well, I am such a huge fan of concept sorting activities that was like my first thing. I thought, okay, I got to take these slips of paper and cut them up, and we're going to do a sorting activity, because I want them to be able to read the different statements and be able to think about what is this an example of. Now, I felt like 8 was too much to do at one time. So I split the intelligence areas and I did 4. One day I introduced 4, and then the next day I introduced the other 4. So let me show you how the activity went. Now, this is not, if you look at what they're doing, you can see it's a Venn diagram. So it's not what I just showed you, but I didn't have a picture of this particular thing, but I'm going to give you the directions because the directions are the same. So you stack the little cards face down. I mean, if you want to put them on index cards or cut apart the MI survey to do that or whatever, because it's similar to those, you stack them face down and students take turns flipping a card or a slip of paper over. They read it aloud and they put it on the chart where they think it goes. And then the team members either give a thumbs up or they talk about where they think it should go. I tell them don't give them a thumbs down, because you don't know for sure. You guys need to talk about it. But if anybody doesn't give it a thumbs up, they need to discuss where it goes, and then it needs to be moved or it could be put off to the side if they don't agree. So that's how it goes. Now, I do have this ready for you. It's it's in Multiple Intelligence Theory for Kids book. So I've already got it like split into 2 days or whatever, just letting you know that that resource is there. So how about another strategy that you could use that's free? And this is a thing that I added to this webinar that was not in here originally, and that is, I thought, you could have the kids do kind of like a storyboard. If you're familiar with that concept, I have some storyboards in some of my products that are like, fiction or nonfiction. It's like plot, setting, different things. But you could basically have them do a graphic organizer where they just fold a large sheet of paper into eighths, and then they draw the lines, and then they're putting something into each block. So let me go through the directions on that real quickly. So you would have to give the kids a large piece of paper. The template that I gave you for free is something you could show on your whiteboard or whatever to show the kids what to do, but they would actually take a piece of paper like 12 by 18, fold it in eighths, divide it up, and then label it. And then what they would do is put pictures. Whoops, sorry, went too far. My computer kind of skipped. So they would put pictures in the blocks, draw pictures, write a description, or whatever. So this could be something that a team could work on together. So if you had a team of 4 kids, each student could be responsible for one part of that. You could do it as a class poster, and each team did one category. You could do it as an individual project. So there's a lot of ways you could do it. However, there is one piece that is missing from this. That was a free template I gave you, but you're going to have to find the information somewhere to give the kids. And so this is the other thing that I just created last week that's like a new piece that goes with the book, is I created these little half-page cards that have the bullet points. You see they don't have a lot of pictures on them because I was trying to save space, but it's basically the same ones as the posters, and it has like 5 bullet points that describe each type of intelligence area. And usually I will do almost everything in black and white for you too, because I know a lot of people just don't want to run things off in color. So, and then I have them with the terminology at the top is the Dr. Garner's terminology as well. So this is something that that you could use. So the next step after teaching them about the 8 areas is to pull out that survey and score it. Now, if your kids are really young and you think they're going to have trouble with this, you may want to do some of this ahead of time, but 4th and 5th grade could certainly handle it. What you do for the scoring part is you have the kids transfer, you give them back their papers and you have them transfer the numbers that they wrote in the blocks on the left side over to the outline squares on the right side as shown right there. And then what they do is they just total all of there's 3 blocks in each column. So like the first one there, naturalist, the 3 statements that are about being a naturalist are all lined up and they just add them up. And then across the bottom you see the words like nature and math and music and so on, and that number kind of represents how they scored in that area. So the highest would be 5 in each would be 15, the lowest obviously would be 0. So it kind of gives them a feeling of where are they strong. So the next thing that you would do is you would give each student an index card and ask them to number it from 1 to 8, and then have them list the 8 intelligence areas in order from the highest number to the lowest. So if you look right here, math, art, word, I want to go back to right here at the bottom, you see math was 14, and then word and art were both 13. So let me go back. So what I told my students is if, math would go at the top, but I said, well, you've got two that are the same, so you need to just think about which one is the strongest for you, and then they would fill out these results. Now, this might be something you might want to keep a copy of yourself or have kids staple into a folder or something. I would not send this home with students because I don't think it has any meaning for parents. Parents might read too much into it. If you wanted to talk about it at like an open house or something, or maybe during parent conferences, but it's not, like I said, it's not research-based or anything, and we wouldn't want parents thinking, oh, my child's terrible and so, and they're always going to be terrible in that. So the next thing to do is to discuss the results with the kids, and I would never have the kids score these surveys if you didn't have at least 10 or 15 minutes after that you could discuss them. The first thing to do is to remind the kids of the purpose of the survey was to learn about themselves. It was not to get a grade. It was not to, this is nothing permanent about them that's not going to change, but they're learning about themselves. They want to look at what are their strengths and what are their growth areas. You might want to talk about, well, you do want to talk about possible reasons for low and high scores. For example, if you are low in music, if your score is low in music, I mean, if you're 8 years old and your score is low in music, you've only had 8 years to have exposure to different ways of learning about and experiencing music. If your family is not musically inclined, you may not have had those opportunities. These kids that are really good in singing or dancing or sports or whatever, and then their parents were really good, they had those opportunities. And a lot of times, it's true, if you think about it, if you can think of an example for yourself, like of maybe something where as a child you thought you were not good in a certain area, but then later you developed that area and you turned out you were really good in that area. Like some people think they're not good in math, but it's just because maybe they struggled a little bit with their times tables or something and they kind of started falling behind, but then later maybe they had a teacher who really helped them get caught up and they found out they are good in math and they really like math. For me, personally, I did not feel like I was good in the body smarts area, Bodily-Kinesthetic. I didn't feel like I was athletic. I was one of those that was always last on the team, and nobody wanted to pick me for a partner on their team. And so I had kind of a poor self-image about myself in the area of athletics. But then later I started, I did swimming and I started playing tennis, and actually when I met my husband, he played a lot of tennis, and when we were in high school we played a lot of tennis together, and it turned out that I was actually very good. In fact, from one year I was like the lowest seed on the tennis team, and then the next year after playing with him all summer, all of a sudden I was the top seed or number 2. I mean, I battled back and forth with one other player for that position, and here I was thinking that I was no good and I was not athletic. Like now I like kayaking and hiking. I'm very athletic. It's just I'm not into really traditional sports. So if you can think about those things about yourself and find an example that you can share with your students, I think it will help them a lot if they have an area that's low. And then of course you want to remind students that we can grow and improve in any area that we wish. So anyways, these are some important concepts. Okay, I did want to stop for just a second in the presentation. As I'm glancing over, I saw some comments about people losing the audio, and somebody said they can't see what I'm doing and that they're stuck on certain slides. I have my own laptop set up beside me. I'm logged on as a participant, and my slides seem to be keeping up, so it might be a situation, as I had mentioned earlier, on your end with possibly like maybe there's files being synced, or somebody's doing streaming video, or you're using a mobile device. So I wish I could stop and help you out a little bit more, but I did see some comments like that. So I did want to stop and address that. And I will say, if you watch the recording of this later, you won't have those problems because I'm not experiencing them on my end. So this little quick tech check. Okay, remember earlier I said when you get your results, the kids might want to share their results if appropriate. And I wanted to give you an example of something that I don't think is all that appropriate. I do have this graph in the MI book, but I feel like bar graphs of intelligence areas should be kept private. And the reason for that is it's very subjective. Like some kids might mark themselves 3s, 4s, and 5s on everything. So if you think about the way they color their chart, it's going to look really high. But other kids might be more conservative. Maybe they just don't have that self-confidence. And so they might be marking themselves as 2s, 3s, and 4s. So if you put all those bar graphs up, some kids are going to look smarter than others, and that's not true at all. So I don't feel like that is an appropriate way to share the results of the survey. So I thought about that when I was teaching. It really bothered me, and I thought, I don't want to do this, but I do want the kids to be able to share because it's really fun to find out, what strengths they have. So this is what I came up with. I made up this little concept. It's basically what you see here, and I have it in the SMART terminology and then also in the multiple intelligence terminology. I call it a color map. So the kids needed these little patterns and 4 to a page, and they needed a colored pencil or a crayon, blue, green, orange, and yellow. So what they did is, if you think about the index card that we had before, they colored, let me see if I show this on the next slide. Yes, I do. So from the index card that I showed you before, they take the top 2 results and they color those blue. So Rick was intrapersonal and verbal linguistic. So he colored those blue on his color map, and then the next 2 are green, the next 2 are orange, the next 2 are yellow. And then there's some activities where the kids can get up and mix and move around the room. You do mix, freeze, pair. They pair up with somebody and they talk about what their strengths are, or you could tell them, like, go find somebody else who's got the same 2 blue areas as you, or somebody who has the same 2 yellow areas. It's just a good talking point, but what I really like about this strategy is that everybody looks equally smart because everybody has 2 blue, 2 orange, 2 green, 2 yellow. So it kind of levels the playing field. So anyways, something, activity for you to think about. The fourth thing that I said after you score it and share the results, the fourth thing was to start using, like getting the kids to apply these concepts to learning and to everyday life. So here's an idea for you. What if you created an anchor chart for each multiple intelligence area, and then maybe you just did one each day, and you brainstorm different study methods and strategies that students who are strong in that area could use to help them learn. So today we might be talking about visual spatial. If you're visual spatial, what can you do that really plays up your strengths? Like create a graphic organizer, draw flashcards that have pictures on them, draw a diagram, create a timeline and illustrate it. So if you created a set of these, and you could do it digitally too, because if you did it on a whiteboard, a smart board, you could save those files and then you could put them online somewhere, or you could shrink them down and give them to the kids. But anyways, it'd be great because if they're having trouble, let's say they're struggling in science, then you could say, all right, pull out your charts that tell you, give you some learning ideas and see what are some things that you could do to help you learn in those areas based on your own talents and strengths. Another strategy is to look at careers and name a career. You as a teacher, this would be like a whole group thing that you would lead. Name a career and briefly describe that person's role, because the kids maybe wouldn't know what they do. And then ask your students to list and discuss which MI areas would be most helpful, like a detective or an investigator. Maybe they're visual spatial because they have to be able to read maps and find their way around. Maybe they're intrapersonal because they have to be able to interview people and find out information. The mathematical logical comes in and they have to solve the case. They have to think about the clues and they have to make inferences. Bodily-Kinesthetic, they have to move around, they have to actually physically move, verbal, linguistic, they have to talk, and so on. So you could just do like a little career at the beginning of the day, you know, just, I have some career cards in that book that you could just pull out, or you could make your own and spend some time talking about how different people use these areas. One reason to do this would be that if kids are thinking about one day they want to have a certain career, they might want to think about, well, if I want to be this, if I want to be an investigator, these are the things that I need to work on and develop and grow. Not so much that they would say, well, I can't be that because I'm not good in that area, but more like these are areas that I need to grow. And here's a freebie that I made up. It's not in the book because I made it up for the webinar, but it is on the freebies page. Is a little activity. It kind of looks like a game, but there's no points. I guess that's the way a lot of my cooperative learning activities are. But I want to show you how you play it. I made up this little graphic organizer game board called How Do We Use Our Skills and Talents? And you need that, and you need a set of task cards. When I say task cards, I mean these are task cards. They're little slips of paper that have just common, ordinary things that we do. And you need 2 counters, like bingo chips, or could be like little math manipulatives or whatever, per person. And the way it would be played is this. Person number 1, you'd say, person number 1, flip up, or you could model this as a class, with the class first, but person number 1, pull out a card, flip it over, put it down. So it might be drawing a map of the local park. And then each kid has 2 counters. So person number 1 would start, maybe they're yellow, and they say, well, drawing a map uses visual spatial skills. You know, that's map reading and drawing. Body smart. Somebody might say, well, they have to be body smart because they have to walk around the park, like they have to be physically active. Somebody else might say, well, maps use labels, so you got to be word smart. A naturalist, well, you're going to be out in nature in the park. You got to be nature smart. Interpersonal, maybe you've got to talk with the park ranger to arrange a time to do this. Anyways, you see where this is going. Math smart might be measuring and drawing to scale and so on. So they might finally get to a point where they say, I don't think, you know, like music smart, no, I don't think that really goes, and that's fine. Like they don't have to use that. So, I mean, just going back to that, I thought there was one more chip there, but anyways, they don't have to use all their chips, but then after this round is over, everybody would collect their chips back, and then the next person would draw out a card and put it down. So it's not you don't get points or anything. But I could see you doing this, a couple of rounds of this with your class, and then maybe have them do a journal prompt or something about, you know, name an everyday activity. They could use one of the slips of paper, and then maybe you could use one that they didn't do in the middle of the team, and then have them write about how you would use your different intelligence areas. So I have a lot of other things that are in the book that can support you with this whole, you know, applying their knowledge, reviewing for if you're going to quiz them and that kind of thing. So let's do a recap on the whole sequence of the unit. As I said, you start with the survey, teach the intelligence areas, score the survey and discuss those results, do a lot of practice and application. And then the last step is if you may want to test them if, like I used to use this as a health grade, like because health has like social and emotional growth as one of the concepts in there, and so that's where I fit this in. So I kind of felt like if I was going to spend time on this, I did need to have some kind of an assessment. So I'm just going to share with you that the book has a lot of different assessment strategies, from paper and pencil tests to journal prompts to team project ideas and a lot of different things. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to be sharing those with you today. So we are pretty much to the end of the piece on MI theory. So we hopefully have covered these 2 pages of your handouts, and hopefully you have some things there to remember that by. So let's go back and look at the true-false test and see how you did. So number 1, MI theory tells us we're smart in many ways. Well, that was kind of a trick question, because MI theory doesn't say anything about smart. It does not use the word smart. So that was true. I don't even know whether to say that's true or false. I mean, it does tell us that we're intelligent in many ways, but I just kind of threw the word smart in there to trick you up a little bit. So I would say false on that one. Number two, MI theory says we're born with different intelligences and those are fixed within us. False. And number three, Dr. Garner defined intelligence as a set of abilities, talents, or mental skills. That's true. He did go on and have some other things about problem solving and so on. So once again, I hate to say for sure if it's true or false because he did have a more elaborate definition. But I put this in here because I feel like sometimes people think that he did not define it. He just defined intelligence as something you're born with. And I don't know if they realize that he actually said it's a set of abilities, talents, mental skills, you know, that help you solve a problem or create a product is really the full definition. So how did everybody do on that? It was tricky, right? So you can't really answer that straight up because some of the questions were sort of iffy. But anyways, got you thinking. My point was to get you guys thinking about it, not so much to get you to get a score. So let's move on. So we started out with a question, what does it mean to be smart? So if we want to say that smart means intelligent, then we need to look at Dr. Garner's multiple intelligence theory, and he says that an intelligence is the ability to solve problems or create products that are valued in one or more cultural settings. But he also says that all human beings have multiple intelligences. These multiple intelligences can be nurtured and strengthened or ignored and weakened. Now, I think this is really interesting because I feel like this is a piece that's kind of overlooked as well. And to me, this sounds a whole lot like growth mindset because as I'll be sharing with you on Wednesday, growth mindset gets into the fact that we need to be using our intelligence areas. She doesn't really call it intelligence area, but we need to grow and learn and not just say that we're born a certain way. So that's kind of a little segue into the fact that on Wednesday at the same time at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'll be doing the part 2 webinar, and just keep your same handouts because we'll be talking about these different areas. So I did tell you at the beginning that I would share with you that there are some more resources available, and we're coming right down to giving you the access to all those freebies. But before we do that, I just wanted to remind you that if you can't attend Wednesday and you would like to have access to the handouts, you know, the slide handouts, a PDF, I mean a PD certificate and so on, this pack is normally $4.95, but I think it's like $3.90 something because it's on sale tonight on TPT with everything else. It's on sale. So that might be something that you would be interested in. Also, the MI Theory for Kids book. I just wanted to just click through a bunch of random pages and things that are in this product because this is something that you might be interested in. I want to show you this image here because this image looks different now on TPT than what it used to. And I want to show you, you might chuckle at this, this is the evolution of a teaching resource. So this is what my MI Theory book looked like 5 years ago when I wrote it. So it was called Teaching Multiple Intelligence Theory. And then, oh, I got real fancy and I added color and I added a little frame around it and so on. So then more recently, this is the one that I've come up with. To tell you the truth, the program itself hasn't really changed because it was a very strong program from the beginning. But then just last week, I actually added those posters and those reference cards to it, and anybody who already purchased the older one, any of those older ones on TPT, can just go download all the new posters and everything for free, even though they probably paid less for it because each time I add to or approve a product, it is going to be more expensive. So that is in something that may interest you called the Back to School Mega Pack. It actually has all of these resources. I'm going to be doing one more webinar on this topic on classroom goal setting next month. It has the How to Launch a Super School Year webinar pack in there. It has Buddy Bio Poems, this class handbook, all these things I talked about in How to Launch a Super School Year, discussion connections, and some student journals. So all of that together normally would be $65 if you bought all of that separately. When I bundle things together, I give a significant discount, so that mega bundle is normally $49.95. That's what it is right now. When I add more things and update my goal setting, then the cost of that will go up. But right now, because there's this big sale going on with TPT, if you use the code one day when checking out, you actually get 28% off of the $49.95. So that brings it down to just about half off the total value. So I will share with you how you can get to that. Also, if you purchase that mega bundle, I have a Facebook group called Super Start. Facebook group, School Year Super Start, and there's information there. If you're interested in joining, just follow the directions there, because we're having a lot of conversations about how to get the school year kicked off and what to do the first few weeks of school. So now we are on to the freebies. So there's the URL at the top. You need to write this down on your, it's the last page of your handout. And I already have written out the whole URL, but you need to write the word mindset at the end, because if you don't write it down, you're not going to be able to get back to it another day. Now, the freebies are, I'm not going to say they're there forever, but I'm not planning to just take them away anytime soon, but it's, you know, you might go there one day and they might not be there, but you can write this URL down and keep up with it. And you go down on the page and you will see a section that looks like this, and then the part that says growth mindset freebies and resources, I will be adding those and updating that section on Wednesday after the webinar. So this is the final slide for you to just, if you're interested in that back to school mega bundle, I mean, that's really your best deal, and it has a lot. If you like this webinar and you haven't seen How to Launch a Super School Year, that's in there, and so on. Now, I am going to try to help you guys get over to that page, because a lot of people do have some difficulty with that, and I'm going to look at any questions you might have. So let me do this real quick. I'm going to type the freebies page there and give you the link so you can just click on it really easily. And then I'm going to actually go over there myself. So I just gave it to you. Let me click on it myself. All right, so I clicked on it and this is what it looks like. And I just wanted to be able to kind of walk you through. This is the information about the mega bundle, and these are all of the products, and if you click on any of these products, it just takes you right over to that page where you can preview it. And then here are the free resources for tonight. All you have to do is just click on these things. It opens up into a PDF or it downloads. If you are not registered for Wednesday's session, you can click right here and go over and register for it. So this one's over, but if you have any friends that you want to recommend this webinar to, I'm going to change this. So instead of saying sign me up, it's just going to say sign me up for the replay, and they can get the replay on it. And then here's the information about the Super School Year book. So let me look to see if there are questions now that I'm finished. So this is the URL up at the top, and let me go back to my presentation right here so that you can see there's the URL at the bottom. Okay, so what grade levels are these meant for? I would say upper elementary. The MI book and everything, like 4th through 6th grade, I think you could adapt a lot of it for 3rd grade. Below that, I don't know that my resources would be the best. There's probably other things you can find, you know, if you teach young kids, and I'd say most everything in that back to school mega bundle is going to be good for upper elementary. I mean, there are a few things lower and there are a few things that could be used in middle school, but if you're not upper elementary, you would probably want to sort of pick and choose certain things that might appeal to you. Okay, someone said that they bought the back to school mega bundle, but it doesn't include the MI theory, motivation webinar pack. Yes, it does, but you have to go back. Like, so if you bought that mega bundle a couple of weeks ago when I first did how to launch a super school year, you have to go back and look to see if I've added new things, and you can usually tell by looking at the picture. So it does. If you go back, I'm going to actually click. I wonder if this will take me to it. That's not taking me to it. So, whoops, sorry guys. Did not mean to do that. Somehow I exited out of my presentation. That was very strange. Okay, this is what happened right here. So if you go to this page and you click on this link, you will see right here all of these things, and it says new MI Theory and Growth Mindset Pack. Also, just to let you know, you see this price here, it says $39.96, but I told you it was like $35.96 or something. You have to make sure that you put in that code one day, or you're not going to get an additional 10% off. Also, this bundle and all my other resources are for a single classroom license. If you wanted to buy for another teacher, you would have to click like right here, and the other licenses are half price, but this is just for one single teacher. So let's see. So someone put TPT will usually write a note that the product has been updated to download it again. The thing about that is the author, like me. Like when I update back to school mega bundle, I have to click a little box that says this resource has been updated. And then I have to type in there like what I've done. But if I forget to do that, which I sometimes do, then it won't, like TPT does not do it automatically. We have to remember to do that. So sometimes I forget, but usually I will come down here on the description and I'll say like new. So you can look to see what's in any product you've bought and see if it looks like it has new things in it. Okay. So somebody said, can you download all the items at once? So it's a big, huge zip file. But the webinar packs, you have to actually go to my website to watch like some of the items. You have to go to my website to get the certificate or whatever, but most of the products are in a zip file, which means you can't download it on an iPad or a phone. You have to be on a computer to download the zip file and then open it up. Okay, let me see. I'm going to go back and see what questions anybody has. Someone who's asking, would you use this survey with second graders? I noticed that there are other things for younger kids about MI theory and about ways we're smart. So there might be something that's easier. I have seen some surveys where, that one's kind of complicated the way it's done. I think there probably would be easier ways. Okay. Let's see. Okay. If you had a question that I did not answer, would you please type it again so I will be sure not to miss it? Okay, and are you guys aware that Teachers Pay Teachers has a sale? Like everything in my store today till midnight is on sale, not just this bundle. Like normally when I do a webinar, I put just the bundle on sale, but it just so happens that tonight, everything in my store is on sale, 28% off. So might be something that you would be interested in checking out. As far as using it with third graders, I have not used it with third graders. So I wish I could give you a honest answer. I would say that you would probably use the easier terminology. You could probably use quite a bit of it. I don't know if you can use everything just as is. I think you would, some of the posters and materials might be helpful. So, okay, so I hope you guys will come back and join me on Wednesday for the growth mindset. Are you guys all registered for that? Hopefully. Okay. I look forward to seeing you guys. And like I said, if you know of some other teachers who might enjoy this, when I send out the replay, feel free to send the replay to them and say, hey, watch this and sign up for Wednesday's session. Please help me spread the word. I feel normally I have so many more people on a webinar than what I have this evening, and I just feel like this is information that I would like to, get out to teachers. So yeah, the PD certificate is only in the bundle. The reason for that is these webinars are very expensive to produce. The software is a couple $100s a month, and that doesn't even count the fact that it takes me over a week, probably 2 weeks to put one together by the time I have to come up with, I mean, not have to, like I enjoy it, but the presentation, the freebies, the handouts, and all of that. So what I do is I like to make the webinars free for everybody to watch because I want people to be able to get the information, but I kind of realize I can't keep doing everything for free, and I hope that if you want to use it for professional development, you won't mind, paying a nominal fee to kind of support what I'm doing. So anyways, that's kind of what I've been doing lately, and because I love doing webinars, and I would really hate to have to stop doing them because just, devoting all of the time for free. So like sales of things like the mega bundle, those things, they help. So it's a way it's kind of a win-win. And many teachers have told me they don't mind the fact that I'm sharing about my products because it helps them understand what to do with those products after they purchase them. So anyways, okay. So I guess I will log off, and if you have questions, maybe what we can do is before Wednesday's webinar, if you think of questions in the meantime, feel free to log on Wednesday early. I'll try to get here early and you can ask me your questions then. All right, thanks so much. I'm going to stop the recording right now, and you guys have a great evening.